lined waiting room of the Anvan High Court, trying to ignore the fact that his dress uniform pants were currently held together by a single piece of high-tensile industrial tape. The local prime minister had hugged him with such species-standard enthusiasm that the seams of his earth-made trousers had simply surrendered. Rafe was a sentinel. He was one of the 12 men who essentially ran the galaxy. Humans were the apex. They had the best tech, the biggest ships, and, according to every alien tabloid from here to the rim, the most ruggedly handsome men. Rafe was used to people throwing themselves at his feet, but usually they didn't try to rip his clothes off during a formal introduction. "Commander?" a voice chirped. Rafe looked up. Standing in the doorway of the hangar bay lounge was an alien woman. She was striking. Her skin was a vibrant, deep green that reminded him of a lush forest. Her hair was blonde and styled in loose, bouncy waves that hid her shoulders. She wore bright red lipstick that stood out against her green skin. Her eyes were a piercing, electric blue, and she was currently staring at his crotch, or rather the silver tape glinting against his dark pants. "I am Ilva," she said. Her voice was like honey poured over gravel. "Launch and recovery technician grade 4. I saw your structural failure on the monitor." Rafe grunted, leaning back and trying to look more casual than a man with a split crotch should. "It's a wardrobe malfunction, Ilva. I've survived worse. I once fought a Korogan warlord with a broken rib." Ilva stepped into the room. She was wearing a dark, futuristic outfit made of shiny, segmented material. It looked like a mix between armor and a high-fashion jumpsuit. Straps went over her shoulders, pulling the fabric tight over her very large breasts. A high metallic collar circled her neck, making her look regal yet strangely submissive. She leaned against the metallic wall near his chair, her blue eyes locked on his. "The Prime Minister is very strong," Ilva said, her red lips curving into a smile. "But his enthusiasm is nothing compared to mine. I have seen the way you command the sky, Sentinel. You humans. You are everything my people want to be." Rafe gave her his best roguish grin. "We try our best. Now, do you have a sewing kit, or are you just here to admire the tape?" Ilva reached into a small pouch at her waist and pulled out a handheld sonic welder. Before Rafe could object, she was on her knees between his boots. "Wait, hold on," Rafe said, reflexively reaching for his belt. "Don't move, human," she whispered. Her fingers were cool against his thigh. "I will serve you. This is a small task for someone of my devotion." Rafe watched her work. She was efficient and focused. The way she moved had a certain grace that most humans lacked. As a sentinel, Rafe was used to being pampered, but there was something different about Ilva. She wasn't just doing a job. She was looking at him like he was a god who had just stepped out of a star. When she finished, she didn't stand up immediately. She rested her hands on his knees and looked up at him. "There. It is fixed. But your life seems so disorganized, Commander. You travel alone. You have no one to care for your needs." Rafe laughed. "I have an entire ship's crew for that, Ilva, plus a high-functioning AI that tells me when I'm being an idiot." "An AI is not a soul," she said softly. Her blue eyes were wide and earnest. "Let me serve you, human. Please, let me follow you." Rafe blinked. This wasn't the usual request for an autograph or a political favor. "Nope, that's a lovely offer, but I'm leaving for the Pylos system in 3 hours. Sentinels don't take tech assistance on a whim. It's against protocol." "Protocol is for those who do not have a purpose," Ilva said, standing up. She smoothed her segmented outfit over her hips. "I have a purpose now." Rafe stood up, testing the new seam. "Look, you're a beautiful woman, Ilva. Really. But I move fast and I get into a lot of trouble. You're better off here in the high metropolis. Go get an ice cream or something." He patted her shoulder and walked toward the hangar. He assumed that was the end of it. He was a busy man with a galaxy to oversee. 3 hours later, as the Indomitable, Rafe's personal heavy cruiser, was breaking orbit, he walked into his private quarters to grab a flask of whiskey. He stopped dead. Ilva was standing by his desk, buffing the surface with a piece of silk. She had changed into a slightly more practical version of her outfit, though the collar remained, and the shiny material still clung to her curves in a way that made Rafe's pulse jump. "How did you get past my security?" Rafe asked, his hand hovering near his sidearm. Ilva didn't look afraid. She smiled, her red lips popping. "I am a launch and recovery technician, Commander. I know every vent and every override code of this ship's class. I served the engine room first. They were very confused, so I told them I was your new personal attaché. They didn't question it." "They didn't question it because you're a gorgeous woman who looks like she knows what she's doing," Rafe sighed. "I have to send you back. We're hit jumping to the rim." "Nope," Ilva said. She used his own word against him with a playful tilt of her head. "I am here to serve. I have already organized your tactical maps. I also found your favorite boots. I polished them until I could see my reflection in the leather." Rafe looked at his boots. They were indeed glowing. He looked back at her. She was stubborn. Most people would be terrified of a sentinel's temper, but she looked like she was enjoying the challenge. "You realize this is technically kidnapping?" Rafe asked. "I kidnapped myself," she countered. "You are a human. You are the apex. It is only right that someone of my kind stands by your side to ensure your path is smooth." Rafe rubbed his face. He should call security. He should put her in an escape pod and send her back to Anva. But as he looked at her standing there, so full of earnest devotion and smelling faintly of nothing, because his ship's air scrubbers were perfect, he found he couldn't do it. "Fine," Rafe growled. "You stay in the guest cabin. You don't touch the navigation controls. And if you try to serve me breakfast in bed, I'm putting you on a transport ship to the nearest mining colony." Ilva's face lit up. "Understood, human. I will prepare your dinner now." The next week was the strangest of Rafe's life. Ilva was everywhere. When he was in a meeting with the warlords of Pylos, men who lived for battle and drank fermented fuel, Ilva stood behind him like a silent green shadow. When a warlord suggested that Earth's taxation was too high, Ilva didn't wait for Rafe to speak. "The commander's time is worth more than your entire planet's output," she snapped, her blue eyes flashing. "You should be grateful he even listens to your whining." The warlord had been so shocked that he actually apologized. Rafe had pulled her aside afterward. "You can't do that, Ilva. I've handled diplomats for 15 years. "He was disrespectful," she said, crossing her arms. Her breasts strained against the segmented fabric. "I will not allow it." Rafe felt a strange warmth in his chest. It wasn't just the fact that she was protective. It was the fact that she didn't want anything from him. She wasn't seeking power or money. She just wanted to be there. That night they were orbiting a gas giant. The ship was quiet. Rafe was in his quarters, looking out the viewport at the swirling orange clouds below. He was nursing a glass of bourbon when there was a soft chime at the door. "Enter," he said. Ilva walked in. She wasn't wearing her segmented uniform. Instead, she wore a simple, sheer gown that was almost the same color as her skin. It was held up by thin metallic straps. Her blonde hair was down, falling over her shoulders in waves. "I thought you might need help relaxing," she said. Rafe cleared his throat. "I'm fine, Ilva, just thinking about the next mission." She walked over to him, her movements fluid. She took the glass from his hand and set it on the table. "You spend all your time thinking about the galaxy. Who thinks about you, Rafe?" It was the first time she had used his name without his rank. It sounded different coming from her. "I'm a sentinel," Rafe said, though his voice was rougher than usual. "I don't need—" "Nope," she whispered, stepping into his personal space. She was shorter than him, but she stood tall. She reached up and placed her hands on his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt. You need this. You need someone who sees the man, not the rank. Rafe tried to keep his hands at his sides, but the heat coming off her was intense. She was so vibrant, so full of life and unyielding loyalty. He had spent his life surrounded by people who wanted his favor, but Ilva just wanted him. "You're making it very hard to be professional," Rafe said. "I am a technician," she reminded him, her blue eyes darkening with desire. "I know how things work. I know when a machine is under too much pressure. And I know when a man is too." She leaned in, her red lips inches from his. Rafe gave up. He reached out, his large hands gripping her waist, and pulled her flush against him. He kissed her hard, and she responded with a low moan of triumph. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the wide bed. The sheer gown didn't offer much resistance. As he peeled it away, he was struck by the beauty of her green skin against his tan earth tones. She was perfectly formed, with curves that seemed designed for a man's touch. Rafe stripped off his clothes, his practical mind finally shutting down. When he moved over her, her legs wrapped around his waist. She was eager and vocal, her hands roaming over his back, tracing the scars he had earned in a dozen wars. "Serve me, then," Rafe growled into her ear. "Yes," she gasped, her eyes locked on his. The encounter was intense. Rafe was a man of action, and he brought that same rugged energy to the bed. He was firm and commanding, but he found himself slowing down to watch the way her expression changed. Every time he entered her, she let out a jagged breath, her body arching toward him. Her skin felt like silk, and she was incredibly responsive. He moved with a steady, powerful rhythm that soon had Ilva gripping the sheets, her head tossed back. "Rafe!" she cried out. He felt the tension in her body snap as she peaked, her inner muscles clenching around him. Rafe followed her a moment later, his own release hitting him like a physical blow. He collapsed against her, his heart hammering against his ribs. They lay there for a long time in the dim light of the gas giant's glow. Ilva's hand was in his hair, her fingers gently stroking his scalp. "You're still not leaving, are you?" Rafe asked, his voice sleepy. "Nope," she said softly. "I told you. I follow you." Rafe shifted so he could look at her. "The Prime Court isn't going to like this. They expect Sentinels to be distant, unattached. They think love makes us weak." Ilva smiled, her red lipstick slightly smudged now. She looked even more beautiful. "They are humans. They should know better. Love doesn't make you weak. It gives you something to protect, and we both know how much you like being protective." Rafe laughed. She had him there. He was notoriously stubborn about his charges, and now he had a new one. One who could weld his pants and challenge his ego in the same breath. "You'll have to learn how to handle a pulse rifle if you're staying," Rafe said, his practical side asserting itself. "And I want you at every briefing. No more hiding in the vents." "I can do that," she promised. 2 months later, the Indomitable docked at Galaxy Prime. This was the heart of human power, a massive station that glittered like a diamond against the black. The other 11 Sentinels were there for the annual summit. Rafe walked down the ramp, his stride confident. He was wearing a new uniform, one that was reinforced and didn't need tape. Beside him, walking with her head held high, was Ilva. She wore a stunning new suit of segmented white armor that Rafe had commissioned for her. It showed off her curves, but made it clear she was a warrior in her own right. Sentinel Miller, a tall, serious man who took his job way too seriously, met them at the gate. He looked at Ilva, then at Rafe. "Rafe? Who is this? We're about to go into a level 1 security briefing. No civilians." Rafe didn't even slow down. He put his arm around Ilva's waist, pulling her close. "This isn't a civilian, Miller. This is my partner, Ilva." Miller frowned, his eyes scanning her green skin. An Anvan? You brought a local technician to the High Court? Is she your servant? Ilva looked Miller straight in the eye. I was a servant, she said, her voice clear and strong. Now I am the woman who keeps this man from losing his mind. And occasionally, I fix his pants. Rafe grinned. She's staying, Miller. Any problems with that? Miller looked at Rafe's expression. He saw the way Rafe's hand rested protectively on the small of her back. He saw the dangerous glint in Rafe's eyes that said he would level the station before he let anyone touch her. Nope, Miller muttered, stepping aside. As they walked into the great hall of the Sentinels, Ilva leaned into Rafe. You did that well, human. I did all right, Rafe said. But I think you're the one who really won that round. Naturally, she said, her blue eyes sparkling. I am very good at what I do. Rafe stopped at the entrance to the council chamber. He looked at the vast room where the fate of worlds was decided. For a long time, it had been a cold, lonely place for him, just business and duty. But as he looked at the green-skinned woman by his side, he realized the galaxy felt a lot smaller and a lot more like home. Let's go run a galaxy, Ilva, Rafe said. As you wish, Rafe, she replied. They walked in together, the apex human and the woman who had refused to leave him. They were a pair that none of the ancient protocols could have predicted. It was a new era for the Sentinels, and as Rafe Gabe took his seat at the high table, he knew he had finally found the one thing power couldn't buy. Someone who chose him, not for what he could do, but for who he was. And if anyone had a problem with it, they could talk to Ilva. She still had her sonic welder, and she knew exactly where the seams were weakest. Expanded and exclusive Sci-Fi Continuum stories are available as eBooks. Links in the description.